Hello, internet friends. My name is Bay, and welcome to the Battle for Azeroth beta and the second pass for the Frost Mage. Which, if you've been following the Mage series so far, Frost is my least favorite / indifferent. I just feel like Arcane is so controllable and Fire is RNG but also reactable. Frost just kind of exists. They have made a lot of strides to fix a lot of those problems, and of course we'll go over that in this video. So I'm going to go over talent adjustments, spells and abilities lost or gained, what has been kept from your Legion artifacts and or legendaries, new graphics, a brief overview of the War Mode talent system and any GCD changes. Again, for casters, not a whole lot. There's no true gameplay in this series, however, I will be hitting some target dummies and showing off some rotations. And to make a caveat to that, I'm not trying to min-max into rotations, I'm showing off the target dummies, I'm just kind of shooting spells at the target. I know what I'm doing more when I'm playing on live, but come on, cut me some slack here. If you want to see the entire second pass testing VOD, which had some juicy discussion in the middle of it, there's like an hour of like, woo! Then you can go check that out in the video description down below over on my Twitch channel. And of course, leave your comments or thoughts or feedback in the description box below that, down below in the comment section. And then, of course, if you're new to the channel and enjoy my ramblings on these specs and want to keep up to date with everything else that I am doing in the beta and then beyond when the live shows start back up here soon, consider hitting the subscribe button. Maybe you hit that bell next to subscribe because that will keep you notified when new videos go live. Right. Frost Mage. Mage stuff. Arcane Intellect is back. Also, Remove Curse is back. Yeah, those two things. Those have returned, if you haven't seen those Mage changes. Overall, Frost Mage and Fire Mage are both roughly the same in terms of poking and prodding. I guess Arcane kind of had the same sort of treatment. All three Mage specs work, okay? They work. They were added and given things in Legion that were neat and good, and some of those have been rolled forward, and they're still very much part of the kit in some way, shape, or form, either by passives or mostly the case in talents. But Frost Mage, biggest problem was Icicle RNG, Mastery scaling, and the random nature of how Brain Freeze and Fingers of Frost work. Now, the biggest thing, I'm going to talent away from Frozen Touch right now just to see flat numbers real quick. The biggest thing that they've tried to do here is, let me also talent away from Drippy real fast. Baseline changes. Water Jet from Drippy is gone. Drippy only has Water Bolt, which does not scale with your mastery either now. Just deals frost damage, which scales with your intellect, your attack power, essentially spell power in that regard. We're on a caster right now. Bay, good job. And then freeze. Freeze, however, which unbinded somehow, does not give you any Fingers of Frost charges anymore. It just freezes the targets if they're able to be frozen, and then of course you can shatter against frozen targets as you normally would. This, in a way, moves some of the power away from Drippy, which then instantly goes like, oh, well, I'm just going to spec Lonely Winter the whole freaking expansion then. And that may or may not be the case. And that's fine if it's a good talent. But if it becomes too mandatory, I might just nerf the talent or buff the others. Because Bone Chilling is sort of just like the arcane debuff, but it applies to the mage. And then Ice Nova was moved up here. More on that later. But rotationally wise, you're not going to be utilizing Drippy randomly just to give you Fingers of Frost procs anymore. He's just not part of the rotation. You can obviously still use Freeze, and we'll show off a couple things with Freeze a little bit later. But that's a big, small change. Water Bolt, Freeze, all it has now. No Water Jet, no Fingers of Frost procs, that kind of stuff. That's a weird one. The crit cap, of course, for the Frost Mage is still that 33.34. Shatter hasn't changed. Still has the 1.5 times modifier, plus an additional 50% critical strike chance on frozen targets. Or, of course, those affected by the Flurry Brain Freeze window. Another big one is your Mastery. So this, we tried to backtrack the math on this because we figured it out on the alpha, and you can go back to the alpha video and you can read that if you'd like to, or listen to me ramble about that, whichever you like to do. And I'm sure the Altered Time Mage community in Discord has figured all this stuff out and has it posted somewhere, but right now, it used to be, and the database says it's 0.1% of your spell power is your actual damage of icicles. The database is totally messed up for this right now. It's actually a int percentage, which is a little bit less than in decimal form, 0.0184. It's been tuned down slightly, but it's also multiplied by your flat amount of mastery stat, which is very awkward. Most times it gets converted to decimals and it's like converted by the percentage of your mastery, and it's not multiplied by this actual number, but your icicles are. Whatever the baseline int is, it's just whatever your mastery 26.84 is, you take that number times 26.84. And that's your base number before, of course, you add versatility. We couldn't backwards fix this because we couldn't figure out that verse wasn't working in the math. But the long and short of all that rambling is that Icicles no longer has A, the black ice nonsense, B, the icicle scaling off of frostbolt damage, C, that your mastery didn't matter because the percentage of damage you put into icicles didn't care because you just cared about, overall frostbolt damage and Fingers of Frost damage. So now it's just int times your versatility and your mastery. Well, mastery then versatility, right? It's flat damage. It'll just scale linearly with your spell power. And then, of course, your mastery stat. That impacts a lot of talent decisions. And, of course, going right back on the Lonely Winter thing, Lonely Winter obviously buffs your Ice Lance and your Flurry and your Frostbolt. So it's an interesting one to see if that will help fix the problem with mastery scaling on the Frost Mage. Additionally, they added increase the damage of your Frozen Orb. Now that, of course, is going to be one of your main components for both single target engagement for proccing more Fingers of Frost and being part of your AoE cleave rotation. So that scales flatly with your mastery now too. And that kind of can impact some different talent builds as well. Fingers of Frost was reworked slightly. It's a 15% base chance on Frostbolt to proc Fingers. Down from, or it's up from a 12%. It used to be 12%, 12%. Frozen Orb, however, went down in chance, probably to make up for the fact that it actually scales differently with damage now. So it's not just only giving you Fingers of Frost, which obviously it's going to give you one when it lands. That's still there. But overall, they put more on Frostbolt to hopefully alleviate the, I'm going to pop Icy Veins and spam Frostbolt for the entire duration of the cooldown. That's not fun. And then Brain Freeze is also up to a 25% chance baseline to give you Flurry. Of course, deals 50% increased damage and applies the Winter's Chill effect to the target. And before anyone asks in the comments, don't worry about it. If you want to do the whole weird, like, double blink distance based on haste and cooldown madness to double Ice Lance, that's still in the game. But even on live, it's less than like a 50k DPS increase when people are doing 2.5 million. Is that even a discernible difference? The correct answer there is no. Because latency comes into play, distance to target comes into play, haste rating comes into play because of travel time, and then, of course, your GCD comes into play based on your haste, based on Icy Veins, or if you're overcapped with Time Warp or Heroism, right? All that. Whatever. So the normal rotation, of course, is when you follow up a Flurry proc, you can either, like, you can shatter your Glacial Spike, you can shatter Ebon Bolt, you can obviously shatter up to one, normally Fingers of Frost or Ice Lance in this case. You still will cannibalize some of those Fingers of Frost procs. This is kind of what Frost Mage does. But these baseline changes alone impact so much else, and of course we'll keep coming back to those over the course of this video. But everything else is still the same. Again, you still Spell Steal, Slow Fall. I have Shimmer talented right now, but obviously you still have your movement speed, movement-oriented talents with Shimmer and Ice Flows and Glacial Insulation, which was tweaked up to 200% armor, mostly because it's the armor squish. Didn't really change much. But Remove Curse and then Arcane Intellect are your new additions overall. But everything else still remains the same. Frozen Orb still grants one charge of Fingers of Frost when it first damages its enemy, and then of course it has the 10% chance every time it deals damage to give you a charge. You can only have 2 charges of Fingers of Frost. That's still the same. And other than that, cast times aside and everything else is still going to be the same. Blizzard still reduces the cooldown of Frozen Orb each time it does damage by 0.5 seconds. That's each time it hits something. So hitting 4 targets takes off 2 seconds per tick. But all that's the same. Let's go hit the target enemy for a little bit. Go over my notes. So yeah, those are the biggest things. The priority list, I'm pretty sure, is still just Frostbolts are greater than Flurry and Brain Freeze procs and better than Ice Lance and Fingers of Frost procs. Like I said, you'll still run into the time where you're going to have a Brain Freeze and a Fingers of Frost charge. So you have the option to either Lance and then Brain Freeze and then Lance again to shatter that one. That may or may not be a different thing depending on how scaling works, because if you're not going to be stacking a whole bunch of versatility anymore because you don't need to, I hope, because of mastery scaling, then that'll be a little different. But also, this is my first time logging in since the new patch, and all the training dummies have changed in the Troll City. This is kind of okay. These are weird, but all right, I'll allow it. They don't have portraits yet. Oh well. They also don't have the elite one here anymore. But I mean, rotationally, you're going to see the same sort of thing that you're seeing on live right now. You're going to Frostbolt a lot, and you're going to get procs, and you're going to shatter those procs, and you're going to try to get a Frostbolt into the Winter's Chill window there. I don't have enough crit to always do that. I'm playing Glacial Spike right now because it's super fun. You can still shatter up to 2 Ice Lances per Glacial Spike. That's still very much a thing. But you're still going to do this a little bit. And you're going to wait for procs. We'll hit a Glacial Spike there. Oh, I can shatter on my Glacial Spike on that one. And one. There's still weird lag on the beta right there. So I did not even hit that ability, but it recast. There we go. One more in there. I probably should have waited and held that for Glacial Spike, but whatever. I'm still hitting a target that can actually be shattered. You could almost get 3 if you had enough GCD timing, but that's not a thing. So we'll do that into Winters to crit that. And one more. See, I could blink forward and try to do that with Shimmer, but again, I'm not going to worry about that. Not a big deal. So all that is still very much there. And of course, there are talents that you can try to work around that may change this, how it works. Again, I'll show you that freeze, no Fingers of Frost charges, but obviously you can shatter on your freeze like you would normally. But again, I don't have 33.34% crit, so I'm under the crit cap for shatter, so you're going to see things not always critting. That's just sort of how it works right now. But talent-wise, let me bring up your live talents here to give you a bit of comparison, because there's been changes, but not a lot of changes. So you lost Unstable Magic. Oh no. Arctic Gale, which was replaced by a much better talent anyway, and Frost Bomb, which was met, at least in my chat, with a little bit of I think if you liked Frost Bomb and the playstyle with it, it was definitely fun, but overall, Frost Bomb didn't see a lot of use, at least in my understanding. Talents added, you have Ebon Bolt, Freezing Rain, and Chain Reaction. So Freezing Rain is the frozen orbs make your blizzard instant cast and increases damage done by 35% for 12 seconds. This is a artifact trait on Ebon Chill. Ebon Bolt, of course, is the exact same thing as live. 45-second cooldown, 2-second cast, launches a shard of its frost damage now instead of, I think it was Shadow Frost, but it's frost damage. Grants you a Brain Freeze charge, which does happen as you cast it, so you can shatter it with its own. Yeah, you can shatter it with its own Brain Freeze proc, but sort of goes hand in hand. So, and yeah, Ebon Bolt, Freezing Rain, both from Ebon Chill. Talents updated. Ray of Frost move way down here. We'll go over Ray of Frost in a little bit. Ice Nova was moved to an actual DPS point. Ice Nova does, on paper, the same amount of damage that Ebon Bolt does, but on a 20-second less cooldown. Ebon Bolt also can shatter itself with its Brain Freeze proc, but Ice Nova in the rotation can be shattered by anything. And it also sets up for shatter, because if you can actually freeze things in place, it freezes them in place for 2 seconds, right? Which is how Ice Nova can be used on live right now. You can use it in conjunction with things to shatter them. But that competes then with Lonely Winter and Bone Chilling, which is curious, because Bone Chilling is obviously very flat overall, works with AoE because it just buffs the mage, does more AoE damage. Lonely Winter probably works a lot better in pure single target stacking things like maybe Glacial Spike or Thermal Void windows. But Ice Nova has a really interesting, snappy rotation that I think could be very fun. So Ice Nova, we'll just grab that real quick. We'll keep Freeze on our bar, of course. This isn't, this doesn't matter. Chain Reaction is your legendary Bracers, which is the Ice Lance damage bracer stacking. It is 10 seconds instead of 8, I believe, on live, so a little bit more leeway there. And Frozen Touch has been reworked to be 20% more chance for Fingers of Frost and Brain Freeze to proc. So if you want more of the baseline rotational changes, then Frozen Touch does that for you. But I want to show off Ice Nova. We'll take Comet Storm here as well. So this is a weird one, which I don't know if this is going to be a really big thing on live. But say, for example, you can actually freeze a pack of mobs in a Mythic Plus dungeon, okay? So you can freeze it with your pet. You can Comet Storm them, which shatters it. And then you can shatter your Ice Nova in the Comet Storm window. Which is just kind of silly. All that stuff can be done right after another. And you can even go one step further with this. And of course, you can time, say, even more burst potential, waiting for cooldowns here. And you can time your Rune of Power into a Frozen Orb, into a Blizzard. We're not using Freezing Rain in this case, because Freezing Rain is kind of like passive, continuous AoE, or even like a bit of a single target gain, because you're going to be Frozen Orb anyway, and you get instant Blizzards. You're doing that on live right now with your artifact traits. But in this sense, you can hard cast, but again, you're going to do the Freeze, the Comet Storm, and that's almost 100,000. It's 100,000 damage once the Blizzard time's out there. And there's still a bit of a graphic bug with ground effects still lasting after. They don't keep doing damage anymore, but, you know, thank heavens. So the damage relationship, you're not going to know how this feels because obviously there's a lot less zeros and you put in comparison right there, though. But that's only a couple globals at level 890-ish, right, in comparison to Legion. So I'm sure there's a couple extra zeros you could put on here. But the fact that Ice Nova can be shattered into a combo with Comet Storm is definitely an interesting interaction that I wonder if that will play out to bring the Frost Mage into a different priority for Mythic Plus. I'm not sure, because Fire Mage is just so dominant in there, I think, overall. And then Arcane Mage is very easy to AoE, but obviously doesn't have much of an AoE kit that it can really do anything about. Frost Mage has this change. And of course, you can obviously run with the Freezing Rain, Lonely Winter. Bye, Drippy. Anytime now. There he goes. So you get the instant cast, right? But you do see the weird thing right there is that you do have a very interesting debate. And this is what came up. There we go. This came up on stream a little bit. That Freezing Rain competes with Comet Storm, competes with Splitting Ice. I don't understand these discussions sometimes because I think a lot of players out there still don't understand how Blizzard is trying to change the game overall to be that you're going to specialize in something. You're going to want to specialize in, am I doing single target? Am I just tunneling a boss? Let's take Lonely Winter, Incanter's Flow or Rune of Power depending on movement. We'll grab some Ebon Bolt or some Frozen Touch. We'll grab the Freezing Rain and we'll grab the Thermal Void, right? We're just gonna tunnel. Or you can just, again, I like Glacial Spike. That's fine. If you're going to AoE, though, then you're thinking, well, okay, we have the Ice Nova, or we have the Bone Chilling, or we have Comet Storm, we have Chain Reaction, which is the Ice Land stacking, which obviously works with Splitting Ice better. But Splitting Ice isn't really AoE, it's Cleave, or Splash damage, as we were talking about it in stream. This is 1+1 targets, that's Cleave, that's 2 target damage. Comet Storm is obviously Burst, and Freezing Rain is sort of passive overall damage, which stacks super fast, of course, when you're using, you know, Bone Chilling. That's still very much going to be a thing. And then your Fingers of Frost procs you get when you're AoE are always going to go into the face of the priority mob, right? The caster mob, the whatever, the one that fears. Who cares? You're going to Fingers of Frost the target that matters the most. But there are different builds you'll be able to do with. Right now, you're obviously used to having Freezing Rain and Splitting Ice and the Fingers of Frost from your Drippy and that kind of stuff, right? For more bursty AoE, kind of cleavy stuff like that. But that's obviously changing because everyone's AoE is being cut down a bit and baselined to not be so out of control, so that you actually only have so many AoE potentials between different specs now. And there'll be strengths and weaknesses, obviously, because you're not going to be good at all types of damage, but these are different types of damage. So just, you know, bear with the game as it changes things. So we're going to have Glacial Spike. Obviously has huge potentials now because there's no more random RNG on top of the fact that you have Icicles not scaling off of weird Frostbolt damage modifier, all that stuff like that, so it's a lot more consistent. Thermal Void remains unchanged. Lonely Winter obviously stacks well with Glacial Spike. So does Splitting Ice because you're putting more damage into your Icicles, which will buff your Glacial Spike, which does work really well with Rune of Power builds. All those things are there, right? That is all there. But what is new to the party is Ray of Frost. And I'm not going to do a whole bunch of tests on stream in this capacity right now. However, Ray of Frost, by all accounts, I did some just flat, like 90-second full rotational bits between Ray of Frost and a build that looked like it would work with it. I was running Bone Chilling because obviously this will impact the 5% multiplier on top of it. I ran Ebon Bolt to try to get a little bit more brain freeze procs on demand to try to shatter some of the Ray of Frost. And I just kept freezing rain because it worked in this build, right? Just you throw your orb out, you throw your single target free blizzard out there, it's fine. The weird thing about Ray of Frost versus Glacial Spike, I didn't do any thermal void testing. That has a whole bunch of math behind the scenes and different secondary stats. Ray of Frost channels an icy beam with the enemy on a 80-second cooldown that ticks for 5 seconds, reduced by haste, dealing frost damage every 0.1 second, or in this case 0.8 seconds. Let me double check to make sure the timing on that is what I believe it is. Because the new build today, I'm actually not sure. It may have changed overnight. Dun, dun, dun. So Ray of Frost, yeah. It's 5 seconds, ticks every 1 second. Yeah, and this is obviously reducing by haste. So again, it's going to stack well with Icy Veins by default, or be really silly in the Icy Veins time warp window. So deals frost damage. It slows the movement of the target by 60%, and each time Ray of Frost deals damage, its damage and snare increases by 10%. And it generates 2 charges of Fingers of Frost over its duration. You have to wait for it to channel the whole thing to get 2 charges. Honestly, in all of my testing on in the beta on the live stream, you can go watch all of it. Glacial Spike and Ray of Frost at current inner class spec balancing, right? Just my own character itself was so close. It hopefully will become just well, I can tunnel on this patchwork fight, and I like the Ray of Frost window and sort of just, doing a Kamehameha beam every, 80 seconds or so. Frost Kamehameha beam. That it's almost the same as Glacial Spike. The damage was like 8k more in favor of Ray of Frost in overall comparison, which is nothing. Very, very little. So they were both barely over or just about 100,000 damage in 90 seconds, just comparing the differences between the main damage source of Glacial Spike versus Ray of Frost. And that, of course, can change, right? Because Lonely Winter may also work really well with Ray of Frost because you get the Fingers of Frost damage and you want more damage in your Ice Lances, but do you want to buff the Ray of Frost or do you want to buff the Ice Lances? Math. You want to take Splitting Ice for that too, right? These obviously work in this case as well. Same thing with Glacial Spike. They work with the same sort of build. And I'm not sure... Get off my hotbar. I'm not really sure how they're supposed to work. And that is, of course, up to math and feels crafty stuff. I'm just trying to get my rotation going here. But it really just... I'll put Icy Veins up, and we'll do one of these. 2 charges. I have enough time to also shatter my Ebon Bolt in this window as well, and 2 more, and then you can, of course, go back into another Rune of Power. Maybe I want to wait for Rune of Power to be with procs, but I'm obviously running Icy Veins right now, so I want to get the GCDs in there. So there could be a build for either one of these. And the whole point of a talent is, obviously, if you can't sit there and tunnel a Ray of Frost into a target that you might want to take it, you'll take Thermal Void. If you can move around and cast with Ice Flows a little more awkwardly, right? I can never really manage Ice Flows. My brain doesn't work that way. Or Glacial Spike. These all might work just fine. These two were so close together right now, I was really surprised. But that's the Frost Mage overall. One other little change to mention is that the barriers that you have on all mages. So Ice Barrier is 22% of total health now, and the Fire and Arcane barriers were both 20% total health. So the Ice Barrier is a little bit stronger, just a little bit, because it only does like a little bit more damage reduction, but it has the slow versus the Fire one that does damage, which kind of works in PvE, because like AoE pulses and stuff do proc your shield for a little bit of extra damage, whatever. But then Arcane's has the reduction effect on it. But that's a little change in the back end, so Ice Barrier isn't like leaps and bounds randomly ahead of the other barriers for some reason. Granted, it still looks like crap. Can we get an update on Ice Barrier, please, Blizzard? I mean, like, honestly. But overall, your rotation... Oh, I thought that missed for a second there. Overall, the rotation with the Frost Mage is a lot of what you're already doing with the Frost Mage, but except this change here, and of course the Icicle change over the course of the entire spec. So let me know in the comments down below what you think of that, what those changes to the spec look like. because I think there's a lot of smooth updates to this, and you can really make interesting builds. Chain Reaction, Splitting Ice, Lonely Winter, Bone Chilling, Freezing Rain. Glacial Spike does split with Splitting Ice. Same thing with Ebon Bolt. These both, Ebon Bolt and Splitting Ice, Glacial Spike all work together. But the Comet Storm Ice Nova mass AoE build I think was really fun. Just because I don't know if this is going to be a real thing on live or not, but... So we'll comment here, and then we'll do one of these. And you can even try to get... If you have enough haste, you could probably even, with Ice Ward, you could Nova before, and then you can cast Comet Storm Nova, and then try to shatter your Ice Nova with the Frozen Nova. I don't know. I don't know if your GCD is low enough for that, but it could be a thing. I'm not sure. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. PvP talents real quick. So these have been changed a little bit. You have lost like 2. Let me go double check here real quick. Like Burning Determination isn't here anymore, and was Frostbite? No, Frostbite's still there. That was the only one I think that was gone. Oh, Mind, Quickness, Train of Thought, and Initiation, whatever. But you activate War Mode in your capital city, Orgrimmar or Stormwind. You get additional bonus honor for killing members of the opposite faction. Even more bonus honor if you kill an assassin. Assassins have bounties on their head. You see them on the minimap and the world map. They deal 15% more damage and healing until they die. And you, of course, can be promoted to an assassin if you go on a 10+ kill streak. There is also more XP for killing monsters and doing quests, and increased rewards for doing world quests at max level. And you get to unlock any of these talents in the open world, in PvP islands, in, of course, arenas and battlegrounds, but not in any PvE dungeons, raids, none of that. So you can pick, Adaption, Relentless, Gladiator's Medallion, whatever. And then you pick one of these. And then you pick 3 of any of your others. I picked Burst of Cold, Ice Form, and Chill to the Bone, because Burst of Cold, Ice Form, they compete, and you can't take these. But Burst of Cold is your Frost Nova, instantly resets the cooldown of Cone of Cold, and it does 400% increased damage. So big old Cone of Cold shatter in the face. And Ice Form is the minute-long cooldown where it replaces Icy Veins, where you turn your body to ice, increases your Frostbolt damage done by 30%, and immunity to knockback and stun effects for 12 seconds. And then I took Chill to the Bone, which is your Frost Nova and your Water Elementals freeze, deal additional damage when the effect ends. Damage is doubled if the Frost Nova freeze is dispelled. But if you're running like Ice Form, Burst of Cold kind of burst build, you can always take Deep Shatter. Frostbolt will deal 150% increased damage to frozen targets. Frostbolt, Frozen Orb, Blizzard, Freeze, and Water Jet no longer generate Fingers of Frost. That, of course, is a tooltip error, because obviously Freeze and Water Jet don't anyway, and Water Jet's gone. But you can take Dampened Magic or Kleptomania, Frostbite, Deep Shadow, like I said, Concentrated Coolness, where Frozen Orb's damage is increased by a whole bunch. Castable at a location, you just drop your Frozen Orb somewhere. Netherwind Armor is the chance to reduce your critical strike intake by 15%, so your crit less. Temporal Shield is the bubble you put on yourself, that after 6 seconds, all the damage you took while shielded is restored to you. Prismatic Cloak is after you shimmer, you'll take less magical damage, 50% for 2 seconds. So pick and choose whatever you like. If you're going to make a build for world questing, making a build for actually PvPing in the open world, or anything else, that's what the War Mode talents do. You pick anything you would like. There's been some hubbub about how this is a lot less interactive or less customizable than the current version, but there are some really neat combos that you couldn't do on live because they're competing. Now you can just pick all that madness right now. But that is the overall in and out for the Frost Mage. Let me go over my notes real quick here. Yeah, I put Ray of Frost versus Glacial Spike. Rough testing, very close. Chain Reaction duration was increased, to 10 seconds from 8. And Glacial Spike, again, has a big component because of Mastery Change. Lonely Winter is well in there, but again, Icy Nova, where do these fall into place here? The only change for your GCD, of course, Rune of Power has always been on the GCD when you cast it. Anything else that you're casting is going to be on the global. Icy Veins is on the global straight up, though, which is a bit of a weird one, because like Combustion is not on the global, but you can sort of cast it while casting spells. You cannot do that with Icy Veins. You have to cast it and then cast spells. But it does last for freaking ever at 20 seconds. You do lose a little bit of that uptime. Obviously, it can be circumnavigated a little bit if you actually run Thermal Void, but Thermal Void builds, whereas can be a little bit more controlled now because of the Frozen Touch update and just the way that the Brain Freeze and Mastery and Fingers of Frost all work together, right? Like, these two have been updated a little bit. Thermal Void is a thing. I think people were talking about how they're getting like 40 to 50 second durations on Thermal Void right now, somewhere in there based on current numbers. Because it gives you up to 30 seconds baseline, right? You get the 30 seconds on Icy Veins. But that goes up by 1 second every time you ice lance a frozen target, which you can do a little more often now. So adding 15 to 20 more seconds is probably a little doable. Probably still have about a minute-ish cooldown. Sorry, 2 minute-ish cooldown, rather, than you might be used to on live, because you can have it forever. But let me know in the comments down below what you think of the Frost Mage and the changes therein. Of course, if you're new to the channel and you enjoyed the ramblings, consider hitting the subscribe button or hitting the bell icon next to subscribe. Or, of course, you want to keep up to date with all of the back and forth of what I am doing when videos go live, when the streams are going up, plans coming up in the future, or talk to the community that we're building here. My Discord is right down in the video description box below. You can join my Discord server, hang out with us and the butts, and just be up to date on a lot of things. We have of course, some giveaways happening. We do movie nights, hang out in Discord chat here and there, just to be up to date. People stalk me on Snapchat, I suppose, in that regard, and post things about me. I don't know if you enjoy that kind of stuff. But check out the Discord link down below. Go to the channel guide, click on my face. All the other Discord links are there too for all the different channel Discords for all the different classes in the game if you aren't joined those yet. But click on my face, get my link, jump in there. But if not, of course, thank you very much for listening and watching. I will see you all in the next BFA Beta Second Pass video.